Hey guys, today we're going to talk about getting those water slide transfers onto your model kits and the tools that I use to do that. So, see you guys inside. Hey guys, welcome to today's video. As I said, we are dealing with water slide transfers or decals. A lot of people like to call them. We're dealing with the tools that are used to put those onto a model. And honestly, for most newer kits and some of the older transfers, it can be a very easy process, or sometimes there are just bad transfers that can be a painful process. And one of the things over time that I have learned, the bigger the transfer, sometimes the harder it's going to be. But I've done this enough that I know that there is enough set of tools that makes this process a lot easier. And I want to discuss those tools today with you to kind of give you a better toolbox on getting those transfers on your model. So we're going to break out what you see here on the table, and we're going to discuss each part as we go through and move those transfers onto your beautiful painted model. Now, if you're new here, make sure you hit that subscribe button as I'm giving away tips, tools, all kinds of ideas to help make your modeling process a lot simpler, but also just kind of one of those things, your subscriber number, that helps. It helps us build and join and find new people and build a better community. So I appreciate it if you do hit that subscribe button. Also, if you enjoy this video and you find the tools that I suggest today useful, make sure to hit that thumbs up button for me. And if there's a tool I missed or something else that you use, please put it down in the comment down below so we can definitely look at a part 2 of this video if need be. So, and also, as we continue to build this channel, please consider joining our membership. For as low as $1, you help us make videos like this. So, with further ado, let's start talking about the decal process that I use to decal a model. So, basically at this point, you've painted your model, you've made it look pretty, you're really happy with it. Now it's time to put on the little bitty details that you didn't want to paint. A lot of times they come on water slide decals. Now Gundams, a lot of them are more stickers. Boo, I'd rather do water slide. Because there's ways to make them set down on the model a lot more effectively. So one of the things I like to do before I start putting on transfers is to seal in my acrylic paint. So I usually use an acrylic matte varnish to kind of seal in where I'm going to be working. I put this on, 24 hours later, I come back and I start the decaling process. You can also use the clear, Mr. Super Clear. This is the gloss version, can also be a very good thing to make sure. Now, why do I do this? Is I'm locking that acrylic paint. Because what happens when you put water on acrylic? Well, that reactivates the paint if it's not fully cured. So locking it in with that varnish level gives you a layer of security that you're not going to disturb the paint underneath. So with that said, what do we need to move the decal onto the model? Well, I use this pretty handy cool tool from Hobby that is basically my soaking and drying bit for the decals. Lukewarm water over here in this part. This is where I put the decal to let it kind of drip off that water after I dip it in for about 10 to 20 seconds. I'll put it over here, let it dry, and hope it's enough time that the decal separates from the transfer paper underneath. So this is really handy. I'll put a link in the description down to this. Some people, well, we just use a simple tool, a plastic bowl. Cheap, effective. This is just really nice, keeps things clean and organized, and the mold-free foam pad does help quite a bit. Now again, if you don't want to use the mold-free pad, well, guess what? Hey, use tried and true paper towels or a fabric cloth. Works really well. Just kind of one of those things. You got to have a resting place for the models after you've soaked them in the water for them to have that bit of time to separate from the transfer paper underneath. Now, I did skip a step. You want to have some really sharp tools around. When you're cutting that decal away from the rest of them in the transfer paper, it is always extremely handy to have a good set of sharp tools. This is just a pair of cobalt scissors. Especially when I'm doing bigger decals, I'll tend to use these to get in there. When I'm using very small decals, I'll get in there with the X-Acto knife with a very sharp edge. Yes, I know I need to replace my blade. it is getting grody. But also, having good sharp cutting tools will save you time and effort when you're trying to get that decal separated from the rest. So we've now talked about dipping, we've talked about drying, we've talked about cutting, we've talked about making sure our paint is safe. One of the tools that I do like to have around is, this is I call it a Gundam vise. It's a very articulated small vise for parts, especially if I'm doing parts like a Gundam arm or something and I'm putting something onto the transfer. A lot of times I will put it into the vise to make it easier to give myself an articulated platform to allow me to have the model part stable while I slide on the decal. So definitely a great little handy tool. Again, links are down in the description to these tools. Works handy, works really well for me. Something I like to have. A lot of people just have the model part sitting on the table, or they have one hand and they're moving the other. So before I pull that decal off the transfer paper and put it onto my model, I'm going to put a layer of microset onto the model. So microset will help your model adhere and soften to your model. So definitely a great tool in working with adhesion and getting it, especially if you're doing like a curved surface. Microset can very much be your friend, and getting that clearness, getting that cloudiness out of the background. This is your friend for doing that with your decal. So we've got our layer of microset. Now it's time to pull the decal off the transfer paper. Well, I'll tell you, the best tools that most of us use is a very simple pair of tweezers. Now, I love my variation set here of all kinds of different tweezers, but in all honesty, the types that I tend to use the L tweezer, and I'll use a 08 from HTM. So very simple, very clean. Lets me get the decal off the transfer paper, sliding it and onto the decal, while at the same time I'm moving it. I might be using a Q-tip to kind of help maneuver soft, gentle in, also absorbing water that may have come over in the transfer process, but to let me move the decal into position. So I do tend to use Q-tips, especially if I'm having a problem with a bubble. A Q-tip can be very good for helping to push that bubble out. So Q-tips are your friends. Don't put them in your ears. And sometimes I do tend to keep toothpicks around for this very process. But a good set of tweezers is your friend when you're doing this process. Then once I've completed this process, I've got it on there, I've let it sit for a little bit, I may come back with one more layer of microset. Now if it's a warm day, maybe 20-25 minutes, I'll come back with the second layer after I've laid the decal down. On a cold day, I probably will wait an hour and a half. So I live in Florida. I don't have a lot of cold days, so about 25 minutes works for me. So then I let that sit for about an hour and a half, go do some other decals further down the model. Then I come to the final step of what I do. Well, almost final step of what I do when I'm applying decals, and that is microsol. And what I do with microsol, it softens the decal, so especially if there is like a mold line or something that the decal is laying over, for example with the Star Fury, there's grid lines in here that I will be laying a decal over. I want the decal to set and kind of go to that. Microsol will improve, softens, basically kind of honestly eats the decal a little bit and will make it sit better onto your model. So, because it's actually, I think this is more of a solvent basically it softens it so it'll conform to irregular shapes. So for more, basically even on the bottle it says a painted on look. So that little bit process right there can help you. And when it comes to the microsol, I may do 4 or 5 very thin coats. So kind of keep that in mind, guys, as you go through this process. Micro set to put your decal on, microsol to soften and get a better fit. Then once that's done, depending on if I want glossy or if I want matte or glossy, finalize, lock everything in with a layer of varnish. Now I tend to go more with the Mr. Super Clear after I put on. I don't tend to go with the Vallejo at that point, just my personal preference. I prefer the Mr. Super Clear. after a decal has been laid. It doesn't tend to interact with the decals as much, where sometimes other varnishes might cause peeling or cloudiness or yellowing of a decal. So kind of keep that in mind as you go through. Find your personal preference. It's always a good way to do it. So as far as applying decals, there's the simple chain of events, the tools that I use to do it. What kind of tools did I miss, guys? What kind of tools do you use that might help me be better at this? Because I'm always wanting to learn and grow in this process as well. So hopefully you guys enjoyed today's video. Remember, hit that subscribe button, hit a thumbs up button if you was an accurate run of this process. Or again, tell me something I missed, because I'm always looking at ways to be better too. So, and again, consider joining that membership. So thank you guys, and we will see you in the next video.